how big of an uphill battle is this for Amazon?
It's an uphill battle for any federal contractor who's trying to challenge the federal government's decision. And the reason is it really turns on the law that the courts start with a pretty strong presumption in favor of the government. And the courts aren't in the business of making government contract decisions. They leave that to the federal government. They're looking for errors, legal errors. And as a result of that, in over 90% of cases, the courts end up rejecting these bid protests filed by disenchanted bidders.
90% does indeed seem like an uphill battle, and yet Amazon going through and filing this anyways. What do we know are their key points?
Yeah, so one of the difficulties of following cases in this court is a lot of the filings are under seal. So far, they've filed their complaint, but it's not publicly available. What we do know is that it has made statements suggesting it's going to target potential bias. And that likely is going to turn on comments made by President Trump about Amazon and about this contract as recently as July of this year. And it seems like the likely claim is going to be that the contracting officers here were biased by the administration's animus against Amazon.
What is, though, the burden of proof when you take a look at weighing Trump's influence?
Yeah, and so that it's not easy. And so we talked earlier about how generally these cases are tough to bring, but when you're talking about the government acting in bad faith, your challenge is even more difficult because the courts start with the presumption that the government acted in good faith, and they don't like to get into the business of second guessing, okay, what were they really thinking about here when they made this decision? And so it's not enough for Amazon to come in and say, oh, there was likely bias here. Likelihood isn't enough. You have to clear the very high legal standard called clear and convincing evidence. Courts are in the business of routinely rejecting looking into that sort of issue. And so what this is ultimately going to turn on is the facts of what happened here. You know, how willing is the court going to be to look at those sorts of facts? And it's tough, very tough for Amazon to get the court to get into that sort of business.
And Matthew, as you take a look at the facts in your analysis, you highlight some key interviews that Amazon could be looking to make. What could we expect from those?
Yeah, so one of the big questions I think facing this judge, and she'll likely have to rule on it as early as January, is she going to allow Amazon to depose the government officers that made the decision in this case? Typically, these decisions and the court cases are fought on the written record, and we don't need to get into these sorts of depositions. The courts only look beyond the record in exceptional cases. Amazon will say, this is an exceptional case. We need to interview these officers and look a little deeper about why this decision was made. And we'll have to see how the judge reacts to that in January.